I want to welcome everyone here today at our Utah Board of Water Resources board briefing. I'm Mike Davis. I'm the chair representing the Provo River drainage. We'll go this way.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Juliette Tennert, representing Salt Lake and Tooele.
Spencer Jones, representing the Lower Colorado River.
Blaine Ibsen, representing the Severe River System.
Then our online guests. William.
Mr. Chair, good morning. I apologize for my absence. Hi there, Juliette. William Merkley, Green River District.
Great. Dana.
Hi, I also apologize for my absence and, or sort of absence, presence, I guess. I represent the Upper Colorado River Basin.
Great. We're glad you're with us. And we heard from Dale Buxton. We know he's on his way. Got stuck in traffic. Haven't heard from Tim Hawks yet. And don't know about Brian Steed. So we don't know if they're stuck in traffic or what the situation is, but I do believe we have a quorum. We don't need the quorum for the briefing, but we'll proceed with that. And Director Joel Williams, will you please introduce yourself and our staff that are present?
Yes, thank you. I'm Joel Williams, Director at the Division of Water Resources. In the room here, we have Sarah Schechter from the AG's office, Shalane DiBernardi, Marisa Egbert, Shannon Clow, Ani Baynard, Brad Caldwell, Eric Dixon, Todd Stonley, Josh Zimmerman, and then is Ashley Sampson hiding behind the pillar? Ashley Sampson's here, and then I see a few guests in the room. I don't know if now's the time to introduce them as well, or we got.
No.
Okay.
We can wait on that. Okay, so let's get started with our briefing.
Mr. Chair,
Marisa. Oh, we have Dale online?
Yes, he's in his car.
Keep your eyes on the road, Dale. Glad you're with us. We couldn't hear you, however, so that's okay. You can wave or do hand signals. Still can't hear you.
Oh my gosh, my heart's like beating.
We'll look for signals. Okay. Let's see. Our first thing we're going to have today in the regular meeting, we'll have our snow report, our NRCS snow report. Jordan will be here.
He's here right now.
Yeah,
Is he? Oh, I didn't even see him.
I'm right behind the laptop.
Glad to have you here, Jordan. We're going to have a transparent water billing update from Josh. Is he here yet? Or? Yeah, we'll do all of that. Yeah, we'll do it in the meeting. I'm just kind of going. Oh, we didn't do these now? Then Jordan, you are now this new system. I get confused. I apologize.
That's okay. I'm confused too. I was hiding behind the monitor there. Can you see my slides okay? We're good? Yes, okay, great, thank you. All right, good morning. Thank you for including me as part of the agenda. Again, Jordan Clayton with the Utah Snow Survey, part of the NRCS. Last time I gave a briefing for the Water Board was in March, and so I wanted to provide some updates as to where the snowpack stands and what happened since our meeting in March, and of course how that has implications for our water resources in the state of Utah. The presentation that I gave in St. George in March was fairly grim, and unfortunately the story hasn't improved since then. So let's talk about what happened with the snowpack this year. We've been looking at these graphs all year, and so I don't need to belabor this too much. Snow water equivalent of the state of Utah is shown with the black line, and you can see the trend that's happened over the course of the winter. We peaked right in early March, right around the time of that meeting, at 8.4 inches, and since that meeting, by the time we got to April 1st, there was a very rapid dry down of Utah's snowpack. In fact, the most rapid decrease in our SWE, our snow water equivalent, that we've observed since the snow-tell era began in 1980. You can see the very rapid decrease in that black line that the red arrow points to, again, over the course of March. So by the time we got to April 1st, we were at extraordinarily low snow water equivalent for the state at 2.7 inches, and I'll contextualize that number a little bit more in just a second. It was also a very early peak, and as you can see from the map at the top, of course, that's led to very below normal distribution of colors for the current snowpack for the state of Utah, but that I'm not going to belabor that because as we get farther and farther into the melt season, those percent of normal numbers become a little bit more meaningless, but I thought at least the long-term time series was a little bit more instructive. So since that meeting in March, this is what's happened with the snowpack. In fact, this is already a little bit old because there's been another round of flights from the Airborne Snow Observatory since April 18th and April 20th. But you can see in the blue, that's where the snowpack was in early March for the Uinta and the Weber headwaters. By the time we got to later April, the snowpack, in terms of the quantity of water within that snowpack, had really deteriorated across all elevations, and you can see, particularly in the lower elevations, how much the depletion was evident, but also even up to those higher elevations, you can see there's been quite a bit of loss by that time. One of the things that's been a recurring case that we've been talking about that's created some confusion this year is the water year-to-date precipitation values. So what's shown in the bottom right is the water year-to-date precipitation for the state of Utah, showing about 90% of normal, 88%, something like that. But a lot of that, as we've been saying, was boosted by that very early water year precipitation fell in October. So what's shown on the map on the left is if we excluded October, if we just started November 1, this would be the percent of normal for Utah's basins, again, from November through just about yesterday. And of course, the yellow is below normal and the orange is getting a little bit more below normal. So we're getting a little bit of a better picture for the winter precipitation when we just scrape off the October portion of that distribution. We've been hanging our hat a little bit on the soil moisture picture, and we've been talking pretty much all winter about the fact that some of that is very unusual. It had to do with the midwinter rain that we received at high elevation, and also the October precipitation really boosted things at the beginning of the water year. And then more recently, we've been having some above normal soil moisture values for different areas of the state and really pretty much statewide because of the early snowmelt. So you can see if we look at the black line for this year's current soil moisture condition and how that compares to the green line, it's really a very similar curve. It's just shifted to the left. And so the soil moisture picture has been very normal this year for a normal snowmelt pattern, but it's just been shifted, of course, early in timing. The frightening part about all that is that it's I think, very clear to see that we're getting into those record low conditions right now. We're expecting a longer than normal period of dry mountain soils. That has potentially two implications. One is we're concerned about the fact that the link that might have to fire hazard during the summer, and there's, I think, quite a lot of good work going on looking at that risk. The other thing is the early dry down may potentially lead to an impact on next year's runoff. We've seen that in the past. If we don't get a good summer monsoon, which we're really hoping for, if we don't keep those mountain soils wet going into next year's snowpack season, we can see an impact on next year's snowmelt runoff. So we're going to be watching that and again hope for a wet August and September monsoon in particular, which signs do suggest we might get, but time will tell on that. These are the more recent stream flow forecasts. These were issued just about a week ago, I should say. These are the May 1 forecasts for April through July flow. And I've colored these by percent of normal, where red is less than 25% of average flow. And so we sort of tweaked the legend a little bit to accentuate places that are going to have particularly dry runoff volumes. And again, across the state, we're really not seeing any locations with close to normal flow. And of course, many locations around the state less than 50% and some in that really bottom percentile range. This is what it looks like if we focus on the basins instead of the individual forecast points that were shown in the last slide. There is definitely the potential to break some records. The red dots here are forecast points around the state where we have the potential, the strong potential to break records for low runoff from April through July. This is looking at those 50th exceedance probability values. Now, I've been talking all spring about the fact that this is an unusual runoff season, so it might be more prudent to look at the 70th exceedance probability values. And when we do that, we see there's quite a large increase in the number of sites that might have record low flow for, again, that April through July period. The orange here is the second lowest that we're expecting. So those sites in particular were listed in our water supply outlook report that was issued on May 1st. They're shown again here. Of course, there's way too much information to gather on a slide, but I just show it here for context. A really large number of sites, really pretty much from every county, more or less, in the state, that are candidates for very low flow. Some areas of the state more pronounced than others. I'm just going to backtrack for a second. The Price San Rafael headwaters has a large number of sites that have the potential to have very low flow. Same with the Dirty Devil and a couple other areas. One of the things that's changed since the last time we met as a group, I was talking in the past about the anomalous conditions that are leading to challenges for our runoff modeling in the past. One of the things I had to add to this slide since we met last is this one that I've highlighted in yellow. We saw a significant runoff during the month of March that's not captured in our April through July runoff volumes. And so, again, the amount of water that we're anticipating for that April through July runoff period is even lower now because of the fact that some of that happened early and was somewhat inconsequential. What's shown here are these snow to flow plots. I've been showing these this spring because one of the points that we're really trying to drive home is both that the runoff is happening early because of the snow melt happening early, but also the runoff response has been very, very muted. What's shown here are for different basins, the snowpack in that basin compared to the runoff from that basin. So this happens to be the Duchesne River near Tabiona. You can see in the headwaters for that particular site, the snow water equivalent shown with the black line and how it's evolved over time. You can also see the stream flow at that forecast point, the Duchesne near Tabiona, with that dashed black line and how muted that response has been to that loss of snowpack. The range of observations that stream flow has seen in the past are shown by those gray shades. So you can really see how unusually low these stream flows are. You can get these kinds of plots for any forecast point in the state by clicking on our webpage. The interactive map, where you're on the forecast map portion of that webpage, and I can help you find this if you'd like. But you can click on any of those forecast points and pull up these snow to flow diagrams. Just one more of these. This is the severe at Hatch, same kind of issue. You can see the really low snowpack and how early it melted out, and there's a little bit of a response for the severe at Hatch, but of course, we're back in those below normal values for that river point. Now, this was included in our April and I think May 1 reports. It was really accentuated in the April 1 report, but I didn't show this graph, and I just show it here to really drive home the point of how unusual this year's April 1 snowpack was. We know April 1 snowpack going way back in time because that's one of the things that's been measured since 1930 or so in the state of Utah. We don't always know where the snowpack peaked those years. It could have been outside of the March and April 1 measurements, but we do know what those March and April 1 measurements were going all the way back in time. And we can look at 15 continuous sites that have been reliably measured and are sort of robust measurement sites going back that entire period of record and see how anomalous 2026 has been. It really jumps off the page in terms of being just strikingly low. We know that it's by far the lowest April 1 snow water equivalent that we've seen in the state of Utah going back through that entire recorded history. One of the concerns that I raise here is, could there be longer term impacts from this year's anomalous snowpack? I was just a guest speaker at the Water Conservation Forum that Josh led a week or two ago. Josh Zimmerman, I should use your full name, sorry. And one of the, I think, really consequential speakers in that meeting was Paul Brooks from the University of Utah. And he showed this slide with different, of course, context on it. But the reason why he was showing this is it's a relationship here On the left side, between annual precipitation and annual stream flow. What is the relationship between what we're seeing in our snowpack and our precipitation, and how is that manifest, in other words, in stream flow? And when you add the groundwater signal, you get the pattern on the right. And the implications of this is that the longer term dry down of our groundwater and our soil moisture really has a strong impact on what we see in terms of our stream flow, which we knew, but this really, I think, shows us how much stronger that correlation gets once we, again, consider both the precipitation and the groundwater. And why that matters is when we have really poor snowpack seasons like this one, we could have an impact on next year's runoff season by, again, drying down those groundwater environments and the deep soil moisture. This is the statewide reservoir picture as of May 1st. We're at the graph is incorrect. Sorry, the graph is correct, but the number on the graph is incorrect. It should say 70%, which is 13% less than this time last year, but close enough. You can see this year is kind of right in the middle of where we were a couple of years ago and where we've been recently. We're right in the middle of that trend. These are the major basins for the state of Utah, shown last year with the purple and this year with the green. Really, a couple places to point out. Southwestern Utah actually has increased storage a tiny bit. There's been some losses in the severe system, of course, as we know. When we combine our reservoir storage with the forecast that we've been talking about, we get these surface water supply indices. I talk about these a lot because it gives us a picture for how much water we're actually going to have available during that summer season. Because it adds on, again, the current water that's stored in these basins with what we're forecasting to get added to that from our runoff. When we do that, we see that we've got, as is shown by the red arrow, a really large number of basins around the state that are in the red. In fact, not just in the red, but below the 10th percentile for surface water supply expectations. There's a few that I've listed that are not expected to be exceptionally low, but they're still expected to be below normal. That's the Ogden, Provo, Price, and Virgin. The Bear is expected to be close to normal, but everywhere else in the state is expected to be basically in the bottom 10th percentile for runoff. So that's really exceptionally low and quite concerning. All right, this is what's happening with the Great Salt Lake. You can see the graphs for SWE, precipitation, and soil moisture, very similar to the statewide picture on the right side. Currently at 4th percentile for SWE. We're getting towards the end of the snowpack season, so that's not a surprising number at this point. 31st percentile for precipitation, and 5th percentile for soil moisture, again, very similar to the statewide story. This is the May 1 forecast picture for the Great Salt Lake. The inflow, if we're looking at that 70th exceedance probability number, would be about 175,000 acre feet, which is about 25% of normal. The lake has already peaked at 4192.3. Don't expect the lake to come up anymore. It looks like it may be actually starting to go down a tiny bit. Here's the range of forecasts for the lake shown in terms of percent normal and the volumes of water. Those are the same forecasts, just shown with those two different options on the screen. So the top is percent normal and the bottom is the thousands of acre feet. And you can see the lowest inflow to the lake for that April through July period being 1992 and how that compares with that forecast distribution. And then finally, the Lake Powell inflow forecast isn't going to cheer you up. The 50th exceedance probability forecast issued on May 1st was a little bit less than 1 million acre feet of water into the lake, which is very similar for the NRCS and the Colorado Basin River Forecast Center. Both of those forecasts are shown on the slide here, with CBRFC at the top and the NRCS at the bottom. You can see the evolution of those over time. Pretty scary amount of inflow into Lake Powell this year relative to normal. Sorry for the content. These are some nice pictures of us measuring the snowpack up by Spirit Lake a couple winters ago when we had good snow to measure there. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Jordan?
Just a question as far as what kind of influence do you think this is as far as with groundwater? Because there is no snowpack this time of year, and I realize that each area, a lot has to do with the geotechnical, the soil formation as far as the percolation rates and those kind of things like that, but just any kind of idea as far as what kind of an impact on the groundwater that this year has made?
Yeah, it's an excellent question and one that I don't have a solid answer for. We don't have a great, while we do have some groundwater monitoring, we don't have anywhere near the amount of monitoring that we have for surface water. And so it's hard to really have a good statewide answer to that question. Certainly when we have less, as you mentioned, less percolation into the groundwater, we're both going to impact this year's runoff. Not necessarily that it's the same water. We know that it takes longer than that for the water to travel through the system, but it does push out a certain amount of water, and that's going to be depleted when we have low snowpack years like this one. And of course, as I was mentioning, the research from the University of Utah suggests that there may be longer term implications for next year's runoff when we have years like this. So there's potentially a concern about how much we deplete the groundwater system also intentionally, and how that might impact next year's runoff.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? We greatly appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
And we like you, even though you bring us really bad information. We like you.
That makes one of you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay. Our next item will be transparent water billing update. Josh, you're gonna help us here. I want to add while you're getting ready, Tim Hawks has joined us. Thank you. Glad to have you here. Okay, and I'm told Brian Steed has joined us online as well. Glad to have you here, Brian.
Good to be here. Thanks.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Happy to be here and share a quick update. Spencer, I thought that was a great question for Jordan, and that slide he showed about how different this year's snowpack is. Well, I have the stage. I just say if there's a year to dedicate some time to looking at what this year does and use it as a tool to create resiliency in the future, it could be a real life example. It's not a worst case scenario, but it might be a worst case scenario that is a real life example. So I thought that was a great question, just to tack on a little bit there. Okay. All right, so I have about 10 minutes of slides, and I have time for questions at the end, but I have a lot to share, so I'm going to go through my slides pretty quick. So that's the mission of the Division of Water Resources, right? So I work in the planning and the conservation side of this a lot, but it is a multifaceted approach for us to create resiliency and extend our supplies. So this is a recap of what Jordan said, right? You have the record-breaking lack of winter that we just went through with summertime in March. You have not too long ago this picture in Little Cottonwood of 2023, the best water year ever. Then you have our growth rate from 1980, what is projected to be out to 2060, right? And then in the middle, you have a graph that our office creates, and you'll see the line that goes across there, and you'll see that we have below average years, above average years, but every year is going to be a little bit different. And one of the things that we work on with the transparent water billing program is communicating effectively to end users how they can use their water wisely and efficiently and extend our supplies on a year-to-year basis. So I want to give credit to our office and the staff that we have. So this is the amount of turf that we have in the Great Salt Lake Basin, and there was a need for this, and our office created this tool and built it out and tested it to see if it was accurate. And I think I just want to share that because we have an incredible staff that is technology, like using all these tools we have and creating them to solve these problems. And we're doing that in-house with this tool. And it's amazing for our state. It's also amazing for all the cities within our state or conservancy districts that we can run this green space map for them. So there's 135,000 acres of turf in the Great Salt Lake Basin. And then statewide, you can see it. It's kind of like a dark sky map, right, where those irrigation areas are. But our turf goes to 165,000 acres. So pretty evident, right, that the majority of the turf is in the Great Salt Lake Basin. So as a conservation team, we focus a lot on outdoor watering. And this slide is from Central Utah Water Conservancy District, but they ran the numbers on a huge amount of residential water use data sets. And you can see those green arrows that are there. That is our potential to conserve. That is how much we overwater our grass. So it's over a foot that we overwater our grass. So if you take that times the amount of acres that we have in the Great Salt Lake Basin or the state, that is a huge potential that we can conserve and save that water to extend our supplies. So that's just a little background on what we focus on with the Transparent Water Billing Program. And another aspect that we look at with the Transparent Water Billing Program is we have dams, we have pipelines, we have reservoirs, we have secondary meteries, we have databases that store all that information. All those are really expensive infrastructure, right? But with Transparent Water Billing, we're looking at taking all of that information that's done, right? And we're looking at closing that last little bit of that loop and getting it back so the end users, so the consumers understand their water use. So we want people to understand their water use when they see their water bill, or if they get emails or texts, that it's understandable and they can use that information to make better choices to use their water efficiently. We also focus a lot on leaks. So leaks vary from 10 to 30% across systems. Large leaks can be enough water for thousands of houses. We've also learned through this program that customers value getting leak alerts, right? They don't see it as us being a nuisance or getting in their business. They appreciate that they can have the opportunity to save a little bit of money on their water bill, but to protect their property is a big one. We try and get city councils to see that water conservation at this scale can be seen as a new source of supply, right? If you can stop enough leaks, conserve enough water, in many cases, that can be as much water as a well. So here's this is a slide from one of the providers that we partner with called Aquatrax. And you'll see on the leak detected portion there, the first 4 days of that month, they didn't have a leak. And then where you get that red, that's the amount of leak that they have, a consistent 21 days, right? And then the blue line that's above that is their water that they're using daily, whether it's a little bit of outdoor irrigation, showering, dishwasher, things like that. And then when you go to the bottom slide, you can see that abrupt date that they fixed their leak. And then another trend that you can see is they're using their water more optimally and more efficiently post-leak, after they got that opportunity to get on this interface and see how they're using their water. So along these lines, some of the things we do, I'll say it's getting down to brass tacks of what we do with the cities and districts that we engage with in this program is we work with rain delays. So if we know a significant rain event is coming, they can send out a text to all of their residents and ask them to turn off their systems and save a huge amount of water for that day. Another campaign is how many times people irrigate per week. You can do it as 1 time a week, 3 times a week, 6 times a week. It's also, when you do analytics, you can really target the high water users. You could also take an area, if you think that there's an area of your city that people are irrigating a lot, you can circle that area and then reach out to them. And then through this project, we're intentional that we have a group that we study, and then we leave a study group so we can have a comparative analysis and see if we're effective. So this is a graph from one of our partners, Yapify, who we partner with, and this is all of the efforts that they did in the Washington County Conservancy District with their member agencies, and you can see the amount of broadcasts that they sent out, and that dark line that has the sharp peak in it is Washington. So want to showcase Washington because they're a leader in this space, and I just want to recognize them for the work that they're doing. So this is the dashboard that Yapify has for Washington, and it's chock full of information. So I'm going to go a few slides on this and hone in on the different areas. But this is when you get used to seeing this with your eye. Like if you were a public works director or on the water staff, you could look at this daily and you could kind of see it as a dashboard and quickly get a lot of information. So Washington wanted to identify how many times people were irrigating each week. So they analyzed their information and they looked at it and saw who was irrigating 0 times a week, 1 or 2 times a week, or 3 or more. So through doing that, they were able to target who they wanted to reach out to. And here's an example of how effective we can be when we take this targeted approach. So if you look at the people that are irrigating 3 times a week, after they received the messaging, they had a 50% decrease in those that were irrigating 3 times a week. So very quickly, easy to see that that we're being effective. Okay, so they're targeting the right people, right? Through doing this, they're saying 1 or 2 times a week, maybe 1's okay, but 2 times a week, 3 times a week for the weather conditions that we had during that time when irrigation likely wasn't needed in almost every case, it was too much. So they targeted those folks. If you look at the arrow that is to the left, you'll see that they didn't send it to a lot of people that weren't irrigating or were doing a good job. And that's a lesson learned from doing this, is that if folks are doing a good job, you want to let sleeping dogs lie, right? People have a tendency to want to move up to average. So if you let them know they're below average, they're going to move up. But the other aspect of it is you can thank folks for doing a good job. But in some cases, it's just better to leave well enough alone.
Are those your dogs, Josh?
No, they're close to my dogs, but in the thanks though. But then, so we also look at tracking other things that aren't really traditionally tracked when it comes to water. So we look at, in this bottom left corner, you'll see that we're looking at things like, if they got a response, was it positive? Did they like it? You can look at it and see if they clicked on it multiple times to see how engaged they were. You can see how often folks are logging in, if it's daily, if it's weekly, and all those things can be tracked because the goal is to have water use on people's minds, right? So they can make effective choices throughout their day, their week, their month, the water year. In Cedar Hills, they're doing a fantastic job. They have all of their meters installed. They're metering for secondary water use based on use, and they're a strong partner with us. And we use gamification here to try and boost the people that were using Aquatrax in their system. So they did a 10-day window, and if you signed up within that window, you had an opportunity to win a gift certificate, right? And then we could measure that and see how much of a boost we got through that effort. We also use this tool to share out some of the things that our office is doing. Almost every city at some point in time has put out a link to Utah Water Savers, so folks know that they can get a rebate for toilets, they can get a smart controller and reduce their water use for almost free. And then we push the lawn watering guide really hard because there's a lot of opportunity to conserve there, and the people we partner with are very good about sharing this out too. So hopefully Dana can see this, but she might recognize this. So our first project was in Dana's stomping grounds, so for groundwater and sewer. And through their analysis, they found that 30% of their water users we're using 72% of the water. So by reaching 30% of your people, you could have an impact on 70% of your water portfolio. And through targeting that top 30%, 78 of the people that received that messaging cut back their water use, and 43%, the control group that didn't get the messaging, they did reduce their water use as well, but the messaging is double the amount without messaging. So I keep this in here just to let people know. This is what we're trying to help folks understand. When they do an irrigation event on a fairly average size lawn, it's 3,000 gallons, right? And we want folks to understand that when they run an irrigation cycle, how many gallons that is. So this is where we're at with our transparent water billing for right now. So we're at a 50-50 cost share. These are our requirements. So education, like for customers understanding their water bill, we require them to convert it to gallons, not centum feet or 1,000-gallon blocks. And then we work with cities, and then a lot of times they hire a service provider that they contract as well. And then part of going through our process and getting on a contract is that you agree to report on the tactics that we're doing and see if we're effective. And our latest application window closes tomorrow. So we have today and tomorrow to get those in. We currently have 3 applications that are in and hoping to get a couple more by tomorrow. And then lastly, so is this program and funding effective? So for this one, I say the proof is in the pudding, right? So our contracts go for 3 years. And after 3 years, the cities, then they're continuing to move on and keep doing these services because it's adding that value. So without our funding, they're continuing to continue to describe and use those services. So I think that's really important because the first 2 years of this are the expensive years and the hard years to get going, right? When you take your data set, you have to do onboarding and you have to get it integrated into their technology. And for these smaller systems, our funding is directly helping them with those expensive years to get onboarded, to get integrated. Their second year is a lot of troubleshooting, and then their third year is where they can be effective, hit the ground rolling, and then at that point in time, they can make the choice of if this has the value for them or not, and if they want to continue on. And like I said, the proof is in the pudding, and they're continuing to keep the systems on. And with that, I'll open up to questions.
Any questions for Josh?
I have a question for her. Actually, not a question.
Go ahead, Dana.
I have a shameless plug for this program. Grandwater, which I was the manager of during the time that we signed up, would have been unable to financially do this without the state's help. And I think it had tremendous value for our water users, and I definitely recommend any system that's thinking about it to contact the division and get a chat going, because it definitely is a great tool, and it's in today's language and can reach all the customers. So, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dana. Spencer?
Yeah, I was just wondering, as far as how the different jurisdictions heard about this program. I just see a lot in the area that I'm in that would be very interested in this, but I guess the application's due tomorrow, is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
But so at this point, it doesn't look like we're gonna run out of funding.
Okay.
So we'll open up another application window. It's at staff discretion when we open up that window. And for context, the reason that we open up a window is because it gives a deadline.
Yeah.
Because like if you have cities that want to do it, but they haven't done it yet, maybe when we put the deadline, they'll do it by the deadline. But we're kind of finding that when there wasn't a deadline, that the applications weren't coming in, and our rate of receiving applications has increased since we've done the application window.
Any idea as far as cost wise? I mean, is it determined like on the size of the system, number of connections?
Yeah,
or is it just
and that's
per
one of the,
subscriber?
so that's a great question. So and especially for smaller systems, that's why our funding is really important, right? Because the computer programming aspect of it, if you're huge or if you're small, it's similar, right? So those onboarding, those integration periods, they're expensive, especially for small systems, because if you have 700 users, endpoints, that cost is distributed around, it's much different than if you have 20,000. So for large systems, it is very cost effective, like similar to how much it costs to do snail mail, right? And then for smaller systems, it is a little bit elevated just because there's not the mass, the number, it's not scalable. It doesn't scale as well, right? Because they're smaller.
Yeah.
So the return on investment's a smaller number.
Sure. Thank you.
Any further questions?
And then, so I think I've done a couple of these, and I just want to let you guys know if this is what you want to hear, if this is effective, and you want me to do updates on, great, I'll continue on this. If there's feedback or other things you want me to dig into and look at, reach out to Joel or, contact me directly, and I'm happy to adjust and accommodate your needs.
I think it's great.
Okay.
I like it a lot. I have a question. How do we have a program to reach out to communities to try and get them energized besides what Spencer's saying? I mean, it's kind of a difficult question because some of these smaller communities and stuff won't benefit as much, but I see benefit for everybody.
100%.
It's just more for some people than others in change. But some small areas have a bigger need as well, so that makes that more valuable in that respect. So
two things. One, to build off what Dana was saying, when people have applied, we have found a way to approve all the applications that have come in, right? So there's some elements to this funding that we need to make sure we adhere to, right, to distribute it. But we also have the flexibility that if people want to engage and they want to do this, that we can get them under the tent and approved. And that coincides with another aspect of this. We don't want to partner with folks that aren't engaged and want to do this. So for us, we want people to reach out to us that are excited to do this. They see it as an opportunity and they want to do that, because our funding isn't huge, right? It can run out, right? We definitely would like to see that funding go out the door and get used, but we also want to work with partners that are going to be very engaged with their water users. They're going to share their lessons learned back and forth with our office so that we can use this funding to elevate aspects like this for Utah, for the Colorado Basin, for the Western United States, right? This is an area that many states could improve at. We have all this information that is, collected every 15 seconds, 1 minute, 4 minutes, right? But if it's just sitting in that database and it's not being used to tie it back to the end user, we're missing an opportunity to be effective and reach out to the public, help them understand.
great. Well, thank you, Josh.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're to discussion of board projects. Bonnie, you're up first.
Okay, well, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We've got Davidson Weaver Canal Company here for RE 504, and Rick Smith is with us today. So this is another UDOT project, well, in coordination with UDOT, but it's located in Clinton City in Davis County. Let's see. And it's just a road, so it's not a very interesting map. But so the Utah Department of Transportation is planning improvements to 2000 West north of 1800 North in Clinton City. They've already worked on this like south of 1800 North. The existing road will be widened and the asphalt replaced with a concrete surface. The applicant has a secondary irrigation pipeline that was installed around 30 years ago that is located within the road footprint and does not meet current UDOT standards. Nearly a mile of the pipeline needs to be removed and replaced with a new pipeline that meets current standards. The applicant is requesting financial assistance from the board to replace approximately 4,360 feet of 4-inch to 12-inch secondary irrigation pipeline in conjunction with the UDOT project along 2000 West in Clinton City. The pipeline will be moved out of the road footprint, which will enable better accessibility for operation and maintenance. Since this is a UDOT project, the UDOT will hire the contractor and oversee the work. UDOT will cover 50% of the estimated impact costs, not the entire project cost, just the impact costs for the applicant, and has estimated the impact cost to be $450,000. There's a typo in the report. It says $550,000, but I checked the cost estimate this morning. It's $450,000. Thus, UDOT will cover 50% or $225,000 of the cost. Constructing the proposed project will allow the applicant to continue to supply secondary irrigation water to the area and allow better access to the pipeline for maintenance. The applicant provides both agriculture and secondary irrigation water at an estimated 50-50 split. Therefore, the recommended interest rate is an average of the board's agricultural rate of 1% and the board's current maximum municipal and industrial rate, which is 3.92%. So we came up with a percentage rate of 2.46%. So the staff recommends the board authorize 85% of the project cost up to $1,150,000 and the project be purchased at 2.46% interest over 15 years with annual payments of approximately $93,100. And that is staff's report.
Thank you, Ani. Board Member Hawks, this is your area. Is there anything you want to add to this before we do any questions or anything?
No, not really, other than this is just part and parcel of all the development we see going on, so we got to make sure we take care of that water infrastructure.
Great, thank you. Does the board have any questions?
I do. It's Dana.
Dana, thank you.
I guess I'm a little confused, not with the project, but with the irrigation customers being used, the fact that it's 50-50 being used to calculate the interest rate, but their rates aren't included on, determining the cost share or determining the affordability. Is that just how we work it, or is this, I don't know. I was just wondering why irrigation customers were figured into one mathematical equation and not the other.
We're thinking.
Okay.
We weren't ignoring you.
I was on mute.
I guess I don't
and I was
understand the
like,
question.
oh.
Really. Can you repeat that question, Dana?
I hope. So in the calculation of how we arrived at the proposed rate for loan payback, it says that half their people are irrigation and half are secondary, but then when we looked at their cost, it just shows the drinking water and secondary water. So I was just confused as to why we were using irrigation to come up with the interest rate and not with their affordability.
I see. Shalane, you might have an answer for this, but
I can do my best.
Okay.
Rick wants to do this.
I don't know if I want to. No, obviously our canal.
Thank you for being here, Rick, by the way.
Thank you. So we obviously have a canal company, which is the irrigation and the shareholder side of things, and then we also supply secondary water. So those secondary water users actually pay the assessments for the water that goes to them. So they pay both canal assessments as well as the secondary fees, if you want to call it that. So those secondary fees help cover the assessments of their water. That helps.
Did that answer,
I don't know
Dana?
if it does. I'll ask my question offline. I'll work with staff to figure out the answer. It's all good. You guys can keep moving along.
Dana, are you asking because the financial feasibility doesn't include any ag costs? Is that what
Well,
you're
it
saying?
just, like I said, I'll get with you later on this. I'm just curious. I'm sure it's not a big deal.
Thank you, Dana.
Mhm.
Any other questions from the board? Juliet.
Thank you, and I'm going to struggle through a question here as well. Just it's not my area of expertise. But first of all, Rick, thank you all the time for you always are so good at making this work and getting in and taking care of things like at a time when, it just makes the most sense and we're the most efficient. And I've always really appreciated your partnership with the board and learning so much from you. I'm actually just wondering, and to that point, we've always seen you and Davis and Weaver be so proactive. And I'm just asking because you kind of know the lay of the land. Are there other things out there in the state where, we're not necessarily partnering up when there's a project like this happening and it just makes sense to take care of the infrastructure at that point? Is it known that the board can be helpful? And it's not fair to really ask you this question, but you're so good at it. And I'm wondering if we could just have Rick Smiths, all over the state. Do you know how
I think that is a good
works?
question. I think most people know there's potential to get funding.
Okay.
I think it really depends on their needs. And again, like some of these UDOT projects, obviously this was not even on our plan, right? Someday in the future, because it's only 30-year-old pipe. So yes, in 20, 30 years, we'd replace it. But UDOT comes in and says, hey, we're doing this road project. And so that obviously expedites it. So for cash flow, we say, hey, we need to go get a loan so we don't self-fund. We had another project by UDOT, the West Davis Corridor, is also impacting us. And we were going to self-fund that. But after some negotiations and some legal things, we figured out a way that UDOT paid 100%. So that was $1.3 million. I didn't have to come and ask for you guys to pay.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
To help pay. We do pay back.
Yes.
I think I write a $2 million plus check every year back to the state.
And and maybe not this project specifically, but I've seen a lot of projects where, again, you'd have to figure out the infrastructure improvements eventually and improve conservation and just improve the infrastructure eventually, and you're able to be proactive through this.
Yeah.
And so thank you.
So I know a recent one, Clinton City, who's also in this exact same corridor, has come and received funding from the state. Right? If I believe that's correct.
Okay, Marisa.
Mr. Chair, if I may, were you at Water Task Force or paid attention yesterday? So this came up from Bear River Canal Company, right?
Yeah, that's much more on the ag side. I have about 8 different EUDOT projects impacting this right now, just my company alone. So depends on which hat I'm wearing. Canal side, yes, we've had to recognize or help them realize that we were there 140 years and we shouldn't be paying for stuff. And so we've come to, again, after a lot of legal fees, we've got to a certain agreement, but we're trying to make that in the state code because they treat ag and irrigation companies as a utility company, which, yes, as secondary water, I consider we're a utility company in a state road. But when you have a canal that's been there 140 years, you're not a utility company. You've been historical conveyance system. And so that's why we want to change that. Going back to Trevor Nielsen's comment yesterday at the task force.
And if I may, just when I was listening to Trevor Nielsen with the Bear River Canal Company discussing all of a sudden these projects come up for them. Yeah. And now we have this new UWIP project where they're supposed to project their projects, but then UDOT or the railroad, because that was also brought up. Laura Briefer also from Salt Lake City Public Utilities brought this up. They've had a lot of conversations with UDOT as well of, hey, we need more of a heads up than this. So I thought that was a good discussion with the task force. It sounds like they're going to kind of put a group together to talk at least to UDOT, and we've seen that on the railroad, where if anything they're trying to do a project and it's taking years to get a permit from the railroad to work next to it. We had that issue with Spanish Fork with some of the secondary ARPA funds, and it made it very difficult because they just kept getting delayed because they couldn't get this permit from the railroad. So it does cause an issue for the funding, and my concern as I was listening to Trevor talk about this and all these projects that Davis Weber's dealing with is, it makes it hard for them to project for this, and now we're looking at this UWIP. You add that to it. I mean, they can be put in there, but it's it may not be in their master plan for 20 years, as you were saying, but now suddenly it's now. So anyway, just a thought, and it's something that I know that came up at the Water Task Force meeting yesterday.
Yeah, we're currently finishing up the first phase of 2000 West. Meanwhile, 1800 North's under construction. This fall is when they're going to bid out this project. And I assume within a year or two after that, they'll finish 1800 North going to West Davis Corridor. Meanwhile, we've also been addressing West Davis Corridor simultaneously while 2000 West is under design. And that's just secondary. Yeah.
It's too bad you don't have anything going on in your area. Okay, any other questions for Rick or Ani or Marisa or anybody? Thank you. Thank you, Rick, for being here. Thanks, Ani. Councilmember Hawks, will you be doing the motion on this when we get into the other meeting? Thank you. Okay, RE 445, Veyo Culinary Water Association, State of Washington County. Okay. Do we have anybody here representing or online representing Washington or Veyo? Slade Hughes. Online?
Slade, are you online? It looks like he is right there.
Great. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Okay, Brad, go ahead.
Great. Good morning, Mr. Chair and the board. So RE 445, Veyo Culinary Water Association. This project is located in Veyo, about 20 miles north of St. George. This project is to replace 2 deteriorating steel tanks with a single 500,000 gallon reinforced concrete tank. And I did inherit this project from Russell, so I got to conduct a site visit recently, and they are not exaggerating on deteriorating. It looks like this tank has been shot by bullets, but it's actually just rusting out at the rivets, and there's streams running out of this tank. So this project is much needed. This project is anticipated to begin in summer of 2026. This project was originally authorized in 2021, but a lot of time has passed and increased costs. We decided to reauthorize in December of 2025. The applicant has completed all necessary requirements. So the staff recommends the board commit 85% of the project cost up to $1,076,000, and then the project be purchased at 1% interest over 30 years with annual payments of approximately $41,700. And that is staff's report.
Thank you very much. Just want to mention that Dale has arrived now. Glad to have you here. I'm sure you'd rather be here than on the traffic. Spencer, this is in your area. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, other than it is in great need. I've heard about this tank for some time, and so just appreciate Slade and the time that he's spent here on this, trying to make this happen. So I think it's a great project.
Thank you. Does the board have, Slade, do you have anything you want to add to this?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity to try and get this project up and going, so.
Great. Any questions for Brad, Slade, Spencer? Okay, well, sounds good. Then, Spencer, will you be making the motion on this?
Yes.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, the RE 498, also the Veyo Irrigation Company. Brad, do you want to?
Yep. Veyo Irrigation Company, RE 498. This project is also located in Veyo, 20 miles north of St. George. This project is to convert an existing open canal system of lined ditch and unlined ditch to a pressurized system. And they'll be doing that by installing about 2 miles of HDPE pipe, service connections, meters, and a pump station. Construction is also expected to begin in summer of 2026. The applicant has also completed necessary requirements to commit funds. I should note that diversion amounts will remain the same, but there will be an expected crop yield from the efficiency of pressurized system. So the staff recommends the board commit 46% of the project cost up to $990,000, and the project be purchased at 0% interest over 25 years with annual payments of approximately $39,600. And that is staff's report.
Thank you, Brad. Spencer, you have anything to add to this one?
I think this is also another project that's greatly in need. This area where the canal is, there's a lot of basalt in the area. It's a very porous soil, and so I think that this will really do a great job of optimizing the water and getting it where it needs to go. I think there's been a lot of loss with the existing lining area, the existing area that is lined, as well as the open channel. So I think that this is a very good project.
Great. Do we have representation for Veyo Irrigation?
We do not, but
Okay.
Slade is heavily involved in this project as well. So if there's any
Slade's
questions,
the guy. All right.
I showed up to that town and he was everywhere. He was at the gas station selling stuff and showing me the canal company. It was amazing. So.
Awesome. Slade, do you have anything to add for this project?
No, this is another project that's been needed here, and we're happy to get some of the old timers along with us to pick some of this stuff up. So,
Great. Are there any questions from the board pertaining to any of this? Dale, go ahead.
Just one question. It looks like you'll have a $39,000, almost a $40,000 payment. How wide is that spread? I'm just curious about the financial burden that might be on your shareholders or whoever's going to be paying that. Do you have a way to kind of reference that? I mean, number of shares or something that we can kind of break that down?
I don't have the number of shares off the top of my head, but I do know there's about 32 shareholders. So it will have to increase, but I think the board is ready to take on that, and the members are ready to take on that for the efficiency. So.
Okay.
One thing I just want to maybe add to that is you'll see down here the finance director, Will Jones. Will Jones is the market president for Cache Valley Bank down there, and I know that he's looked at this quite closely as far as making sure that it's very clear to all of the shareholders of what kind of obligations we're going to be looking at.
That's good.
Okay, any other questions? Spencer, you'll be doing the motion on this one?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Slade. Thank you, everybody. We'll move on to the next item. Thanks, Brad. RM 095, Cottonwood Gooseberry Irrigation Company. Ani, you're back.
Hello.
We should
Morning, Dale.
We should get this so that you just come up and do all yours, and then.
Just go.
But
through
maybe
the
you like the
agenda.
steps. So you get to go, then you step.
Okay, so I just want to say, just to begin with, that the president is now Brian Miller. It was Lynn Anderson, but that has recently changed. And
Just to let you know that I'm on the phone, Brian Miller.
Thank you. Glad you're here, Brian. Thank you.
Okay, so this is an ARPA secondary meter project. And in the March 2023, well, first of all, the proposed project is located in Fairview, about 6 miles north of Mount Pleasant in Sanpete County. And in the March 2023 board meeting, the board committed ARPA grant funds to purchase and install 655 secondary water meters. And the board also, at the time, authorized funding for a loan. So now the applicant has completed the necessary requirements to commit funds for the loan. And so the staff recommends the board commit 25.5% of the project cost up to $840,000, and that the project be purchased at 1% interest over 15 years with annual payments of approximately $60,800. That is staff's report.
Thank you, Ani. Brian, do you want to add anything to this? Brian Miller?
Sorry, I had to take it off mute. Anyway, yeah, we're above, I think, 500 meters being installed right now, and so we're getting the people trained on it and getting up to speed on it, and so we're making good progress on it. That's really all I got to say.
Okay, thank you. Blaine, this is your area. Anything you'd like to add to this?
No, not really. This is just one of the ARPA secondary meter type things that we've dealt with a lot over the last period of time, and Fairview city is just going to town on it, and it's exciting to see. They're doing a good job. So
I assume we did some sort of an analysis of the benefit that we would see off of the meter installation. Do we have any idea what that will help us?
I do not have the conservation information with me right this minute, but
Okay.
we did do an analysis, and
It was favorable.
And it was, yeah, it's, I mean, typically a 30% reduction when you install meters, so similar to that.
Perfect.
And I can tell you, just not going by numbers, but just visually watching our ponds from last year, we can definitely see the city's using way less water than they have in past years. Even though we're in a drought, we still have water. We've been able to leave the ponds on constantly, and we can already see an improvement.
That's great to hear. We love to hear those stories. Okay, if there's no further questions, did I ask if there any questions? Okay, Blaine, will you be doing the?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That? All right. Thank you, Ani. Okay, we're at that point where we turn the time over to Joel.
Thank you. Shalane, do you want to give us a status of funds report?
Good morning. There's not a lot of change from the last status of funds. I gotta be honest, it feels a little weird to get back to a more normal few projects a meeting instead of so many secondary meters. So as you'll note, there was one feasibility, 3 committal of funds just presented to you. So those committal of funds are all just changing location on the report, on the status of funds list. There have been a few more contracts entered into. So as you can see, even after the actions today, there's still over $9 million available in the revolving construction fund, regular project fund. There, we have entered into another engineering contract for dam safety. So there's still a little over 15 million available there. Moving to our conservation and development fund, with Davis and Weber's new project, it's just over $1 million, so that reduces the amount unobligated to about 58 million. So there's still plenty of funds there. And I will point out that the Colorado River reuse funds, we had the first bond closing for the first phase of the Washington County project. You committed the 66 million approximately. They closed on that bond. With what's remaining authorized, it looks like we're overdrawn, but since they won't be needing that yet, well, we expect the last $50 million deposit from the WIRA at the start of the next fiscal year. So we'll have those funds available before they actually are needed. So that's one thing with Washington County, with all the way the law is set up and what's been approved by the board, that 40-year repayment makes it so they definitely don't want to take it until they really need it and then utilize all 40 years to get that repaid back. So so there hasn't been any change there, and no new applications. So the status of funds looks very similar to what we had at the March meeting. We will have a little bit more discussion about what might happen with some of these C&D funds with the UWIP presentation later, when Eric gives you an update on what the Unified Water Infrastructure Plan is going to do. Are there any questions regarding the status of funds? Not this time? Great, thanks.
Thank you, Shalane. We have an item for a legislative update. We have interim coming up next week. We have been asked to present at the Natural Resources, Ag, and Environment Interim Committee. We will be talking about kind of a water status and drought update, and then we will talk about the Unified Water Infrastructure Plan and our long-term infrastructure funding. And then we've been asked to present the following day as well. So Natural Resources Interim is on Wednesday, May 20th. We'll be doing that at 8:30. And then the following day is Legislative Water Development Commission. That'll be Thursday, May 21st. We've been asked to present at 8 a.m. On the topics there would be the water supply. Oh no, that one is more focused on, let me just scroll down. Water supply, and then also the division update on what our activities and any concerns we have to share with the Legislative Water Development Commission. So that's kind of the legislative update for this meeting, is that we will be doing interim next week. And then I'll turn some time over to Sarah Schechter with the AG's office.
This will be quick. The update I have to give to you, I think, would be better given during a closed session during the meeting, because it is on the Utah Physicians versus DNR case. So I can provide whoever wants to make that motion with the language for that. Mm-hmm.
So that I say it right. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Let's see, do we have... Okay, I think we'll save a few other items for the director's report at the end of the meeting, but that's it for now.
Great. I don't show anything else for the update component, so it's time for break. If I can have a motion for a recess, and
I'll make a motion for recess.
how long do we want?
15 minutes.
15 minutes?
Quarter to 10, so 15 minutes.
Is that okay with everybody?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second for recess to come back in 15 minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're in recess. Want to welcome you back from our recess. We're now in the regular meeting, and the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes.
Better have a roll call, see who's here.
Yeah, we can do that.
Sure, let's run through Chair Davis.
Chair Davis here.
Board Member Tennert.
Here, thank you.
Board Member Jones.
Here.
Board Member Ibsen.
Here.
Board Member Hawks.
Here.
Board Member Buxton.
Here.
Board Member Van Horn.
Here.
Board Member Merkley.
Yes, good morning.
And Board Member Steed.
Here.
Okay, thank you everyone for being here. First item of business will be approval of minutes. Are there any corrections or edits to the minutes? Seeing none, will someone make a motion?
Move to approve the minutes.
We have a motion by Councilmember Hawks, second.
I second it.
Councilmember Ibsen. Let's do a roll call vote.
Board Member Tennert. Aye. Board Member Jones.
Aye.
Board Member Ibsen.
Aye.
Board Member Hawks.
Aye.
Board Member Buxton.
Aye.
Board Member Van Horn.
Aye.
Board Member Merkley.
Aye.
And Board Member Steed.
Aye.
Okay, we're going to move to the board actions now. These will go quick. That's the idea. First item, RE 504, Davis and Weber Counties Canal Company. Are there any additional questions or discussion on this particular project? Okay, seeing none, entertain a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the board authorize 85% of the project cost up to $1,156,000, that the project be purchased at 2.46% interest over 15 years with annual payments of approximately $93,100.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Hawks. Do we have a second?
I'll second it, Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Ibsen seconded. Do roll call vote.
Board Member Tennert. Aye. Board Member Jones.
Aye.
Board Member Ibsen.
Aye.
Board Member Hawks.
Aye.
Board Member Buxton.
Aye.
Board Member Van Horn.
Aye.
Board Member Merkley.
Aye.
Board Member Steed.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Next item, RE 449, Veyo Culinary Water Association. Any additional questions or discussion about this project? Seeing none, we would entertain a motion.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the board commit 85% of the project cost up to $1,076,000, and that the project be purchased at 1% interest over 30 years with annual payments of approximately $41,700.
We have a motion by Councilmember Jones. Is there a second?
I can second that.
Councilmember Buxton has seconded. Roll call vote.
Board Member Tennert. Board Member Jones.
Aye.
Board Member Ibsen.
Aye.
Board Member Hawks.
Aye.
Board Member Buxton.
Aye.
Board Member Van Horn.
Aye.
Board Member Merkley.
Aye.
Board Member Steed.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Next item, RE 498, Veyo Irrigation Company. Any additional questions or discussion on this project? Seeing none, Chair will entertain a motion.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the board commit 46% of the project cost up to $990,000, and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 25 years with annual payments of approximately $39,600.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Jones. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that motion.
That'd be Councilmember Ibsen does a second. Roll call vote.
Board Member Tennert. Aye. Board Member Jones.
Aye.
Board Member Ibsen.
Aye.
Board Member Hawks.
Aye.
Board Member Buxton.
Aye.
Board Member Van Horn.
Aye.
Board Member Merkley.
Aye.
Board Member Steed.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Next item, RM 095, Cottonwood Gooseberry Irrigation Company. Are there any additional questions or discussion on this project? Seeing none, the chair would request a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the board commit 25.5% of the project cost up to $840,000 and that the project cost be purchased at 1% interest over 15 years with annual payments of approximately $60,800.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Ibsen. Is there a second?
Chair, I'd like to make that motion.
That'd be Councilmember Jones. Roll call vote, please.
Board Member Tennert. Board Member Jones.
Aye.
Board Member Ibsen.
Aye.
Board Member Hawks.
Aye.
Board Member Buxton.
Aye.
Board Member Van Horn.
Aye.
Board Member Merkley.
Aye.
And Board Member Steed.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, that completes the projects. Our next item on the agenda is policies related to the investigation report. Shalane.
All right, thank you. I left you all some handouts. I brought Sarah with me, so if she needs to correct anything legal, since this is kind of legal stuff here. Regarding the investigation account, and I'm going to start with an apology. I have known this account existed for my whole time at Water Resources. Knew it was used for things, never really understood all the things behind it, didn't take the time to read the code. With a new director, as we're trying to figure things out, we saw some things and thought, wow, you know, this is really probably something that should be included in board training. And since it hasn't been, as long as I've been doing board training, thought we'd provide you a little information today, primarily because, so this is a sub-account located within the revolving construction fund. The first sheet I gave you is code 7310-8, and it's regarding the board's revolving construction fund. As you'll notice in subsection 3, that's where it specifically references this account. And so just so you're all aware, when the board funds a project, we charge an administrative fee. It doesn't specifically cover staff's investigation of the project, but it's charged like that. There was a time when the division actually did charge the actual fees that the project engineers incurred while they were working on a project. Because sometimes, I mean, it really used to be, there were times the division actually did the design, right? That no longer occurs, at least not very often. Sometimes we will offer assistance, but so for the most part, it's almost looked at like a loan origination fee. But of course, we don't refer to most of your project funding as loans. So we call it an administrative fee. And that administrative fee is deposited into this investigation account. And as you'll see in that 7310-8 subsection 3, the investigation account is to be used by the board for the purpose of making investigations for the development and use of the water resources of the state. And so it was kind of reading that where we're like, well, I know we've funded contracts with the investigation account for years, and it's not the board that does it, it's the division that does it. So what's going on here? What is happening? And well, it is, the contracts that it funds are for the development and use of the water resources of the state. The board is almost never involved in it. And so we did a little more digging and found a few more things, which is why I've provided you more than one sheet of paper. So as you'll see, Code 731019 actually lists the director's power and authority, and as I hope you all are aware, basically the director of the division acts as the board's executive secretary and so has certain power and authority. As this code states, just to summarize, it says within rules established by the board, the director has the power to make studies, investigations, and plans for the full development and utilization and promotion of the water and power resources of the state. You may recall that this board used to be the Water and Power Board. It's been water resources for a long time, but it used to be power, including preliminary surveys, stream gauging, examinations, tests, and other estimates either separately or in consultation with federal, state, and other agencies. Also to initiate and conduct water resource investigations, surveys, and studies, prepare plans and estimates, make reports thereon, and perform necessary work to develop an overall state water plan. And I'm like, okay, well, that's great. Okay, as long as we're operating within the board's rules. And then I found there is a board rule. Again, something I was not aware of. So that's page number 3, is R653-4, and I apologize. I know this is small. I hate the PDFs from the administrative rules side, but they are tiny.
Sorry, I just want to put in a side note. We recently had a training at the AG's office with a person from the Office of Administrative Rules, and every single one of us on the call said, you guys need to fix your website and make the font bigger. So that feedback has been provided.
Yeah,
exactly.
Validating a very frustrating experience I had just last week. Thank you.
And that rule also states that the investigation account may be used to fund special studies and investigations which relate to the state water planning effort as determined by the board or director, and that funds have been and will continue to be used for hiring consultants, paying salaries and expenses of staff personnel, subsurface investigations of dam sites and wells, hydrologic and water quality data collections, purchasing technical equipment for use in investigations and construction of water projects, working with the federal government on various studies requested by it, and performing environmental studies. So I wanted to bring all of this to your attention so that you know this fund is out there. This account is out there. It does grow with every project that you fund. We get another admin fee. Our admin fee, I always have to apologize when I discuss it because it is based on the amount of board funding provided, but it was very much set up by engineers. So it's not a straight dollar amount. It's whatever the project funding amount is to the 0.66 power, and then rounded to the nearest $100. Yes, as Juliet laughs. So it varies. There are also minimums set, a minimum of $2,000. So even for the smallest project, the board will collect $2,000 into the investigation account, and the maximum has been set at just over $86,000. That's a 30-something million dollar project. So even for something that goes as high as, say, 195, they aren't going to pay an admin fee more than $86,000. But this account is also used then to fund things like we coordinate with the USGS on stream gauging, so we get that data. Many other studies done by universities, some are initiated by us, others simply the university reaches out and says, we have someone who wants to study this. Would this be helpful data to you? Would you provide assistance? And so those are the types of things that are regularly funded from this investigation account. But we wanted you to be aware of it, and we wanted to get your input. Would you like regular reporting on this? Is there something more you would like to know from us? Is maybe an annual update on contracts funded from this account a useful tool? Now that I've just dumped this on you, you didn't have any time to consider this.
I guess I feel that it would be good to know, and maybe annually is good enough. What would be the procedure if the board, for some reason in discussion, thought, we ought to study this?
Mm-hmm.
Would we just ask you and say, do you have money for this?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Use out of that fund?
Yes.
And having said that now, just for me, a yearly update, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, to know that, because you have to account for the money in your budget.
Mm-hmm.
And so just to know that, yeah, there's money there, and if we needed to, we could. I can't think of anything that we would do that. I mean, basically, we just tell you to get it done anyway.
Right.
But I think it's good to know.
Yes, and I think that's why we wanted to bring it up today and to say these are the things, I think when we think historically of this board as a policy-making board, and yet it seems like so much of the division's work is really assigned by the legislature, not necessarily this body. But if there is something you're interested in, or even just something that we funded that you would like that information, part of what's requested as some water providers want assistance with their water supply forecasting or their, drought management plans or different things, those are things that are probably helpful, and if there's funding available, is a wise use of these funds. But there's, in the past, this has been used for everything from cloud seeding studies, and now there were so many things that we were funding with this, but that does provide the division with a lot of information, but could also probably be useful to you. So yes, we'd be happy to report on that and keep you informed, and also open to any requests, suggestions. That's one thing Joel mentioned is, the board should know this. So if there's something they'd like us to do, that's what we're here for.
How does the board feel about that?
Chair,
sound okay?
I think it's great I think once a year is enough. Maybe if we just talk about, what kind of process it would be like if us as a board had a project that we wanted to have studied, something like that is that just something that we would go to Joel? Is that something we talk about as a board? Like what, I guess what that process would be, to use these funds, so.
I can see going to Joel as an important part of it, since he also
Mm-hmm.
can disseminate these funds.
Yeah.
So if we just kind of do it that way it kind of keeps everybody in the correct loop for who manages or who has the ability to spend out of it.
Yes, I agree. I think that'd be the proper route is reach out to Jill with your questions, suggestions, and he can help figure out if we've got the time and resources to get that done. So absolutely.
Yes.
I know I was up here kind of just shaking my head, but I appreciate the way that the engineers set up a fee like this, because you don't have to worry about, you set the thing at $2 in 1974, and then you have to go and figure it out. So I actually appreciate that. And I guess more of a comment really than a question, just because I can't help it. So I feel like usually when we think of like a fee or an administrative fee, it should be tied like directly to the service that's provided.
Mm-hmm.
And for what it's worth, this kind of feels more like a little bit of a tax, right? Like we're just gathering a certain amount based on other projects and then using it for other things. And again, the legislature's basically authorized that. So I'm not concerned if the legislature has authorized that for us. I think that works. And I totally agree. I think it just makes sense because we have the authority over the funds in that account to have that annual report, just so we have eyes on it because it's our authority. But I don't know. I'm just kind of struggling a little bit with the policy of
Well,
a
and
fee
it-
versus a kind of a,
Well, and it is, it,
a little
it
bit of
comes
a-
out of the first, like,
Yeah.
and I'll just tell you, it is the very first pay request process. So like when, with the Veyo Culinary project today, whenever that purchase agreement is set up and the project gets started, the project engineer, the very first
Yeah.
pay request will take money from the loan funds, the project funds, and transfer it just directly to the investigation account. So it is part of the loan that has to be repaid. But I mean, there was a time I've had to do this where we would send them the money and then say, now here's an invoice for our fee. Please send this back to us. Now we just handle it with an internal transfer.
And I see that, but I also see that every project,
Mhm.
the staff is doing something.
yeah, exactly. It's part of
To,
it. Yeah.
whether it's conservation or feasibility or capability of repayment or interest rates or whatever. There is a lot of investigative type work, and I know that
Yes.
we kind of look at it and say, well, that's just what you do as a job, but
Yes, it
but
is.
in reality, I think that is a very firm justification.
And I will clarify one thing. There is one type of project we do not charge an admin fee on, and that is when, like ARPA and FEMA, when it's a federal grant, we do not receive admin fees for those projects.
Is there something in the code that specifies that?
No, we just have decided internally that it's probably not an appropriate use of federal funds. Let's use as much of those funds for the actual purposes. Staff is going to get paid one way or another. So we'll only charge the admin fees when it's board funding.
Does it go through the administrative fees process? Do you all know? Like there's the bill that gets approved every year and submitted and.
No, I don't think it does.
This is more nerdy, like it's.
Yeah,
offline,
this is because it's not, like we don't, the fees that the board has that does go through that process is only the applications for a water bank. Water bank application has a fee attached to it that has to go through the legislative process. Nothing else. People can apply, and even if our staff goes through the process of doing an investigation and presenting that report to you, if ultimately that project does not go through, we don't ever collect a fee for that. So there are times when staff time is just offered up as real government assistance.
The way I was sort of thinking about it is it's sort of like closing costs, right? Because if you're doing a loan in any other context, you know, a private loan, you're going to have closing costs. And so this is sort of like closing costs in that it is tied to the project. But of course, as everybody has mentioned, staff gets paid either way out of the appropriations from the legislature. This way, these fees go back into funding important projects for the, development and use of our water resources.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. We were talking earlier about how the Department of Natural Resources really has it on lock, even just everything, just the way we do our virtual video conferences and such. And I would just say, Shalane, you're apologizing a little bit about not sharing this with us, but like you are sharing this with us, and you all do just such a good job of training the board and giving us information. And I truly appreciate you bringing this to our attention and being so thorough. So thank you.
I think it's a good discussion.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dale, did you have something?
Just a couple. What's the balance in the account?
Knew that was coming. And I don't remember exactly, but I think at last check it was somewhere just over $1.5 million. So yeah, it's not huge like your revolving funds, but it is enough to help out with studies here and there.
So does that mean that the property that was sold was $3,000 an acre for this 500,000 acres that this money was attributed to? That's what the code says, the 500,000 acres.
What?
It says under 1B. I was just as a joke. It
Oh,
says there about 500,000 acres.
No, because I'll tell you, this was probably done way back in Yeah.
1953.
Yeah. I was gonna say we might want to clean this up, but someone might want to clean this up.
Oh, yeah, well, and you know, we find things every once in a while that we try to get cleaned up, but every once in a while we'll find something. I was looking at something earlier this year and went, oh Lord, it still references this old fund name that isn't. So, or you'll still find places in the code, I think, that does say Utah Water and Power Board, so.
I think that 1B is the public trust funding that we do get money every year.
From the Reservoir Trust?
It's part of what the lands that SITLA manages, yeah.
Yes, and that's another item that I'm going to have to start regularly reporting on, because we do. We've always just treated it as regular revolving funds, but with certain audits, I think, from the legislature and others about how those state lands are managed and wanting to see. I mean, we get a very small amount of the funding that's in that state trust lands account. Now I can't even remember exactly what it's called, but there has been a process set up where there will be more transparency on where exactly those funds are going. So what it will look like to you. So I do appreciate you bringing that up, because it is an item I have forgotten to mention before now. There's an amount that we receive quarterly. They estimate at the beginning of the fiscal year this is going to be the deposits through the year. And so we'll just look at that and probably assume that the first revolving fund projects funded will come from that money, so that we can have an accurate accounting. It'll probably be a separate page on another separate page on the status of funds, but just to track it, so you know, and you're right, that's what that is. It's the State Reservoirs Trust is what they call it.
So Shalane, just to follow up on that, is that then the $1 million or so that you mentioned, is it included then in the remaining funds available for one of these accounts, since you mentioned it was a sub-account?
It's a sub-account, but I think we keep it separate. I don't think it's included in that funding in the revolving construction fund, but I will need to verify that.
I was just, in terms of I don't know how much disclosure is needed, but I'm just, if you could add a line that just said investigation fund and then.
And just the balance.
Update it as you go.
Okay.
So that you can see where it's broken out in whatever fund it is in. That would probably be adequate, I would think.
Okay, great.
Something like
that. I will make a note of that.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you. Very informative. Okay, next on the agenda we have the Unified Water Infrastructure Plan, or for our nerds who like acronyms, UWIP. I am not one of them. Every time somebody says an acronym, I have to think about what it means. By then, half the conversation's over, and I'm slow.
It happened earlier today with UWIP, so I was like, it took me a minute to figure out.
Figure out what it is. Okay.
Eric, would you please unmute the microphone? We're unable to catch you on the record.
I got you. How's that?
I'll
start over.
Hear you now.
Mr. Chair and board members, thank you for having us here. We're here to talk, like mentioned, the Unified Water Infrastructure Plan. I don't dare say it because I always say the wrong words. So I'm going to be calling it UWIP now that I've said it once, okay?
Okay, once you've identified what it is, if our discussion goes on, so when somebody comes up to me, oh, did you hear what they did at UWIP? And I'm going, not sure.
All right, I'm Eric Dixon with the Division of Water Resources. On the handouts you got, you had Keith on there, but he got double booked, so we got Rachel Valek here from Bowen Collins Associates. They're kind of the lead for the consultants that we've had helping with the UWIP over the past few years. Our goal here is just get a very broad overview of some of the stuff that's happened. I know in March we gave you guys a little more detailed overview of the whole UWIP process and things. But one of the main purposes of this is to kind of say, how does this impact the board, which we haven't really ever gotten into before. Just to kind of review, it all started when the legislature passed HB 280 in 2024, and HB 285 had some cleanup items in 2025. The things that came out of that were the Water Infrastructure Fund, which is the what's the word for that? The account for where if they decide to put some funds in, that it'll go into there. That then the Water Development Coordinating Council will help with the distribution of those funds. And then it also laid out what was required in the UWIP. The whole purpose of this is kind of improve collaboration, get the overall picture of what infrastructure is needed over the next 20 plus years for anything water. You know, we talked about that: dams, pipes, drinking water, wastewater. If the word water is in it, we want it to be in the plan. And then with that list, one of the main goals was to get that prioritized, get some rankings of it, so then the state can kind of have an overall view of how much funds are needed. Well, not even just how much funds are needed, but what are the overall project costs for the state, and then what people are expecting to be asking for assistance funding with. And as part of that, there's been some studies that have been done. They're listed there, and here on this next page, we've shown this timeline. You know, that the today on top is slowly moving towards the end of what was laid out in the House bills. We're about to do our second relevant agency plans, get those updated by the end of June. And all those studies and things are available online. Down in the bottom left-hand corner, or the right-hand corner, I'm left-handed, I get those back and forth more often than wrong than right. But in the bottom right-hand corner is the website where you can get access to those links, and just kind of the whole UWIP plan is on there, and the things that are coming up have been done in the past. And just as a reminder, this is all kind of under the WDCC, the Water Development Coordinating Council, which includes these three on top, which are called relevant agencies. Those are the three divisions that kind of have more teeth in this game for providing funding for water projects. And so those are the three agencies that do develop a relevant agency plan that then is the information that's used to prepare the UWIP. And that UWIP's prepared every 4 years. The agency plans are updated every year. So like I said, we're right now in the process of getting those updated with all the projects. We had basically every year we have a deadline. Right now we've set it at May 1st. Get all the projects into that so we can kind of add those into the agency plans and get an updated overall project cost for what's coming up over the next 20 plus years. In the WDCC, it includes these agencies and then 4 others, and we've talked about that before, so we're not going to get into that much in detail. But again, we are part of the WDCC. Joel's on that council, and he's the chair. Right? Yeah, that's the title he has for that. So we're super involved with it, and it's really a great opportunity to work with these other agencies and get to know them and work on these things and kind of do a little bit more collaboration than's been done in the past and moving forward.
Thank you, Eric. As you see on the screen here, this is a Utah project portal. As Eric mentioned earlier, we gathered water infrastructure projects across the state of Utah to help create this UWIP plan. This was the tool that was used to help gather that data. This is what the front page looks like, and then this is a little overview of what type of information is submitted by each of the entities. This includes things like the project name, location, project type is important, and then the project total cost and how much estimated state funding cost there is. This right here is a summary of the projects that were submitted in fiscal year 2027, so this first year of the UWIP. So the total number of projects submitted was 4,167 with about 263 entities. The total project cost came to about $24 billion, and then the estimated state funding need from that is about $6.3 billion. And I also wanted to note that these projects came from across the entire state of Utah. There's at least one project from every county in the state. So there was a lot of involvement from the entities within the state. And then specifically for water resources, there's about 713 projects that were submitted from 115 entities with a total project cost of about $4.2 billion and an estimated state funding need of about $1.3 billion. These are the assignments of the infrastructure types. The ones that were given specifically to water resources was the agriculture off-farm, secondary water, and then water supply, raw water source development. And it's those infrastructure types, that were used to calculate the amount of funding needed from water resources on the previous slide. This right here is a summary of the UWIP process. It's been split into 3 phases. There's a provisional scoring phase where the projects are submitted and they're run through an initial scoring based on criteria that was given within the legislation. And then those projects are then assigned to the relevant agencies. The relevant agencies have an opportunity to look through the projects and look at the provisional score, re-rank them. And then it's sent through the agency plan, it's sent to the Water Development Coordinating Council, where they then look at funding prioritization and the distribution of the funds that are in the WIF, in the account that Eric mentioned earlier. And then from our study, this is what was found, is that amongst the relevant agencies, there's currently about $100 million of typical funding. I will note that this doesn't include federal funding. This is mainly from revolving loans and from the state tax that goes through relevant agencies. And then we found that about $100 million in additional funds to the WIF is what's recommended as either loan or grant. That hasn't been fully decided yet. And then the distribution would be, as indicated in this table, there's kind of a split between the first 50% in that count and the second 50%, and the distribution amongst the agencies. And those are drawn from the project types that were submitted and where we saw the need was based on the projects that were received.
And on this page, you say we recommended the $100 million additional funding come. It wasn't received. So there is not really a big amount to put in there for grants or anything this year. So it's basically working off the $100 million that comes from the agencies through the regular process and loan repayments. There were a few little amounts put in, kind of designated for certain projects. So there will be some funds that will be put into the WIF. This page is just kind of showing what funds are impacted by the UWIP. So on the, let me get this right, on the left, that's the funds that are subject to the UWIP process. I'm not going to read through all those. You've had the papers and you can review back to it. But there's some grants and loans that will need to follow this UWIP process. But on the right, there's the ones that aren't expected to follow the UWIP process. A big part is if they have federal funds tied into it, grants that are already in place, such as the dam safety grants, and then loans that you can kind of see the list that are there. So it doesn't impact all the projects, but we have told agencies and we said, in order to get funding, we want everything to be in the UWIP. We want it to be in the Utah project portal. We need it to be inserted in there so that if they can get funds, it's in the system. So it comes down to how does that impact the board? What's going to be different from this UWIP process? And our goal is it's very minimal. The boards are in place. The WDCC is not a new board to kind of manage everything and to help, to kind of control everything. The whole purpose of the WDCC is more to kind of gather the information, put together how much additional funding is being recommended, and then if those funds do get put into the WIF, then kind of looking at how to distribute those back to the boards, and then it kind of goes back to the process that the boards already have in place. For example, if there's new WIF funding It needs to be in the Utah project portal. The agencies will each prepare those plans. You know, we might provide it to you guys to give a look over, see if you have any comments or things on what we've done to those agency plans. It doesn't require any approvals from the board or anything, but our plan is to let the boards have it, just kind of look over and kind of see what the plans are. And then the WCC again kind of distributes those funds, but the agencies will then continue through the board or other processes. Each agency will administer those funds. For the existing revolving fund, again, very minimal. We want the companies that are coming for a loan, we need to say, we need you to have your project in the Utah project portal. That's one where, I know we talked earlier about some of the things that Weber Basin has, where all of a sudden they're told, oh, you need this right now, when they didn't have a plan for another 20 years. If they're in this plan and they're coming for loans, and there's funds available because the loans haven't been taken out, because a lot of people we come, and if grants are made available, we know that they'll want the grants, but everybody doesn't want a loan at the time. So that's what the purpose of that is, so that when things come up, they can still come in and get loans, and we want them on that Utah project portal. In the past, the board here has done some fundings with drinking water and reuse projects. From now on, with the appropriation or the distribution of the projects that Rachel went over, the general idea is that the board here won't be doing those. There will be some situations where the process that we have is a little, for smaller projects and things, we can still fund those projects, but those would be with the non-WIF funds. And here's kind of a new one. Shalane kind of hinted to this earlier in the meetings. The unobligated money at the end of each fiscal year, and that'll be starting with this upcoming fiscal year 2027. So by the end of next July, or end of June of 2027, any funds that aren't obligated will kind of be consolidated. Each of the three agencies will say, here's some funds that we don't have obligated. We're going to put it back into the pool, and then the WDCC will look at how to divide that up, kind of with the distribution that Rachel showed, with the first 50% is a set way, and the other 50% they can kind of look, which agency might need a little more help, or so each year that'll get looked at. Shalane kind of talked about what's the big fund? The Conservation and Development Fund. It's kind of got a good chunk of money in there right now. By the end of next year, we'll kind of look at that and say which funds aren't obligated, and make that available to be put into the WIF and then distributed. And the idea is anything that goes into those that is a loan, it comes from loan funds and needs repayment, will stay that way. If things go into grants, but things that have come from funds that were repayments and stuff need to stay in the loan process. Hopefully that simple and short, but our goal, the UWIP gets us a big overall view. The WDCC kind of looks at that and goes to the legislature and requests money, and then when those funds come, the WDCC splits those out back to the different boards or the agencies and the divisions, and kind of move forward as much as possible using the processes that are already in place. Any questions?
Chair, I just had a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Spencer.
One is, so it looks like here, if I understand right, that our main projects that we're going to be dealing with are going to be more irrigation and dam projects. Does that sound right?
Yeah. I mean, mostly what you have been doing, I know there has been some drinking water and things, but those now will be, the intent is that those will go to the drinking water group, and ours will be secondary water, irrigation water, off-farm distribution, dams and reservoirs. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then just the other one was just, and this might be already, solidified in place, but just a little bit concerned. If you look at the provisional scoring down there, there's just, a lot of area within the state that isn't heavily populated. Some of the other presentations and stuff that we've had earlier today. So 12% of the weighting, if you look there under the provisional scoring, will be based on population benefited. And so I could just see that possibly hurting some of the other, parts of the state that doesn't have as much, population. So, like I said, it might might already be, solidified, but that's just a concern. And I think, if I remember right, there was a few other board members here on our board that had expressed that concern here, a few months ago. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think we've talked about it before. This is subject to change each year. The WDCC can kind of look at these scores and say, do we need to change things to balance it better? So yeah, looking at those to see if in that it does kind of has a built-in, it has a population factor and then a non-state funding factor. So and there's some information on the UWIP website that kind of talks about this provisional scoring. We kind of made some efforts to kind of account for that so that it didn't weigh so that all the big populations get the funds. That's why it's kind of hard to just see in the wording there, population benefited and non-state funding, but it kind of was worded and calculated to kind of help bring up those smaller populations because of their funding availability and things. So.
Great, thank you.
But yeah, we can talk to the WDCC, and input from the boards would be great as we look at it. And again, we've talked about there wasn't a big chunk of money put in for grants, and if and when that happens, that's kind of when those shuffling and changes and evaluations will probably be more applicable, because right now it's kind of the loans that are the process we've kind of had in the past. So.
And then I also just wanted to note that the provisional score is one of the first steps in the prioritization process. There's a step right after that for the agencies to be able to look through the projects and re-rank it depending on how they see fit. So I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because they will, let me kind of clarify this, they will get broken into the 3 different divisions. So it's not like we're competing so much with the drinking water stuff. Because once we get our group for the board here, or for the division, then they can kind of focus on that and look at that.
So this all has to go into the portal now. What happens to the traditional applications that the applicants have come to the Board of Water Resources and said, here it is, the board members look at it, we do our thing and all that, and that has historically obviously happened year-round. Is it the same application, the same criteria? What happens to our division, our board's application?
Pretty much stays the same. So kind of just clarify the portal, they put some very basic information. It's not nearly all the detail that comes into the application. And then if they come and looking for a loan, we'll say, let's make sure you're on the portal just because it's there for that big picture view, but here's our application. And so it'll pretty much stay the same application process. So it doesn't really change much. I mean,
have to submit that application just once a year now prior to the June 30th, it sounds like?
No, so the Utah Project Portal, they can update that anytime. We'll have a deadline that says, and this is more if some big amounts get put into the grant process. That May 1st is the current deadline. We say, if you want to be considered, if some grant funds are available, you need to be on the May 1st. And we want you on there if you're going to be expecting to come for loans. But if they have an emergency that comes up or where they need to work on a project fast, we can work with them to say, let's get you on the project portal, and so that we kind of see that for the big overall picture, but then we'll go to the actual each agency will still follow their application process. Does that clear that up? Or
can I add something, please,
yeah.
Eric? So if I could just add, for this next year, we don't see much of anything changing for this board. The one thing that will change is if someone submits an application, we will ask them, is your project in the portal? Because the UWIP now requires the planning to be part of consideration for funding, we want every project in the portal. Now, if there do become grant funds available in the future, that's when we'll say, hey, we saw your project in the portal, will you please submit an application to the board? We might actually solicit some of those to get additional information to make sure it is a ready, willing, about to go project, so we could get them going. For projects like, he referenced Davis and Weber. I mean, Rick is one of those who had even said to us, he said, look, can we just continue on the way we always have? We know we're not going to get a high score, so we're not going to be ranked up near the top. We'll probably never get grant funds. Can we just keep doing our come and repay our loans? And I said, yes, except that the UWIP did add a couple of little criteria now where the board's conservation and development fund is considered WIF funds. So there is this distinction, but we've had so much fun implementing it, where they created the water infrastructure fund. It's an actual separate fund where they can deposit money. If they decided to implement a fee and started collecting fees or whatever, they could deposit money in that fund, and it would be at the council's discretion to use for this UWIP. And then they added the board's revolving construction fund, those funds included here, that are now called WIF money. So the WIF money includes the water infrastructure fund, or the WIF, and some of those other funds. That's considered WIF money subject to the UWIP process. Your revolving construction fund is not one of those. It is separate and distinct, and that will continue to operate as it always has, including the dam safety grants. The larger projects that are funded from the Conservation and Development Fund will now have to take this extra step of being in the portal so they can be ranked. We're struggling with how do we implement now this legislative process and calendar into the board's process, because when he referenced this consolidation of funds at the end of the fiscal year, it actually starts, and this is where it gets really fun. We have to decide early, like let's say September, what the board's status of funds is, report to that in October to the Legislative Water Development Commission and tell them what could be consolidated at the end of the fiscal year. So I think the one thing we would encourage is, if an applicant wants funding from the board anytime in this fiscal year, get your application in early. So even if it's not going to be funded in November, it would be helpful if those funds were obligated to board projects. I mean, right now we could say there's about 58 million unobligated. But that may or may not be the case come next year. So, I mean, it is going to be a fun process implementing this into what the legislature has now created, because the point of being able to tell them in October, this is what we have obligated, this is what we have available to fund projects, is to hopefully get them to start appropriating funds that could go further and get more water projects constructed. And not just ours, but all of them that are needed across the state.
So how does this, a lot of what we get is, my understanding has been that we get it from the gasoline tax, a certain percent comes into our.
No, sales tax. It's just general sales tax.
General sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, that is no longer going to be the case that we get our proportion. All we will get is whoever on that committee, depending on how many, it sounds like how many projects are put in the portal. And if we only have 1, 2, 3, 4 things in the portal, we could be out of business almost.
You won't be.
Like.
I'll guarantee you, Blaine, you won't be. As they said, the list of projects assigned to water resources was over 700. Now it is a 20-year time frame, but still, 700 projects is plenty. The key is figuring out what will be obligated and what won't. And even if, I would say this, and this is why I think it will be important for you to communicate with staff, even if you know that projects are in the near future, we may need to get those applications sooner than later so we can get those. Like I had a conversation with a water provider recently. They actually have one of those projects on the future funding needs on the status
This
of
is where I'm
funds.
going. Yeah, I want to understand like this whole like future funding needs versus what's been authorized for 10 years. Like, talk to us more about that.
Right. So, and they were under the impression that, hey, we still have your funding available to us because we're still on that list. And I said, no, you, at this point now with the new UWIP process, you need to get your project in the portal so it can be ranked and prioritized. And I realize at this point, it may be a 3 to 5 year project. It may be a 6 to 10 year project, but it at least needs to be on that list. I don't foresee us having to give up all of our funding. I think we will continue to see what we've seen. We'll have applicants that need our funding, we know need our funding, and we can get that, whether it's authorized or even just approved. We can consider that obligated. So, but yes, I think part of the process, part of the reason this all came about in the first place is this board doesn't provide grants for regular projects. So your funds grow at a rate that some of the other funding boards don't. They do provide hardship grants, or as we like to tease them because they call it principal forgiveness. They make a loan and then forgive the principal. So they aren't getting those funds back. So those agencies, those boards do run out of funding. And especially if there's, say, drinking water, and there are crucial drinking water projects that needed to be funded, we may have to sacrifice some of our funds if they aren't obligated to other projects, to those.
Yeah, my concern is just like Spencer is. I represent a very rural area of the state. This provisional scoring, even if it is a preliminary step, is biased against my area right out the gate, and trying to get word out to these little small irrigation companies that need help. They don't know what their needs are going to
right
be at the time, and to get word out and have those people put something in the portal is nothing short of a monumental challenge. So this particular thing puts rural areas, in my opinion, at a distinct disadvantage.
Okay, but that was not our point. And I will say, I think maybe the summary information presented isn't super helpful to clarify this. But a prioritization of the Water Development Coordinating Council was to prioritize rural and make sure that state assistance is going to those rural areas. We did not want Delta, Fairview competing against Salt Lake City for the funds. That was not the point. And so those things are considered. And another key we want to make, and make sure all of you are aware and get out to your people, is there is funding assistance for planning, because planning is now such a bigger requirement. That's part of the point, is let's be proactive in figuring out what projects are needed, not reactive when something fails. Let's figure out what exists and how long it will last, and when it needs to be replaced. So part of the UWIP code is to allow funding for planning purposes. Planning is a valid project. So even if, and I will say, the portal may seem a little bit tough, but it's actually something that's been in existence for a while and been used by R6. They developed it with the help of the governor's office, I believe, and it was simply expanded to accommodate this. So the CIB board, the Community Impact Board, has used this portal for quite some time. So there are plenty of rural users who know about it and know how to use it. And I think as Water Resources Agency, now that our focus will be primarily on ag, secondary dams if needed, we'll be able to look closer at those projects and make sure that what needs to be prioritized is prioritized. And Eric mentioned we could share it with you. I think we will share it with you because you are our funding board and we would like your input. So last year was the first time we actually had to come up with a relevant agency plan, and I'll just tell you, we were all under a bit of a time crunch and we barely looked at it. So, but in the future, the point is to really verify that information, and if we need to solicit applications from those who have put their projects in the portal to get additional information and verify where they should be on the prioritized list, we will do that.
I'll just clarify, I might have misunderstood, but yeah, this page shows where that 100 million comes from with the current kind of regular typical year. That's all still staying. Nothing of that's changing. The money that comes from the tax and the repayment for the loans that are currently out. But it'll just be evaluated each year of if there are unobligated funds. Any other questions?
One quick question, just to follow, just to make sure I'm clear. This seems, I'm looking at this from the user side, the people that are going to be putting the information into the system. Because I had the opportunity to go in and mess with the stuff for the entity that I work with. And a lot of it was best guesses. But it sounds like from what I'm hearing that strategic planning is what you're trying to push smaller entities to do. And that's probably part of the motivation, because part of the application, as I understand it, is that you've got to have some type of planning set up in your application. Is that right?
Yes, even irrigation companies are required by this code to have a reserve study, not necessarily a full capital asset management plan like a water district might have, but yes, to conduct a reserve study. And we understand that's going to be a tough ask.
And we haven't even been, reserve hasn't even come up.
Right.
So
but that's why I am making sure to say studies, planning is a legitimate project.
Okay.
And absolutely, that should probably be your top priority. Let's, or close to it.
We'll see. We just washed the canal out this week, so we'll
go.
get that fixed first.
Okay.
So then the other piece was, you mentioned, I think there was mention of between loan funds and grant funds, being on this list puts you in a better position when it comes to getting grants. Am I hearing that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because the loans, if people want to come and say we need a loan, if the funds are available, and if it came to a point where enough people were coming for loan, we'd probably need to look at the scores, but we're not to that point yet. Okay. But if grants come in, then that's the whole purpose of what the HB 280 was putting this UWIP together, was to prioritize and rank those so that the funds went to those that kind of rank higher.
Okay.
And that's where we'd go out and say, request, are you interested in getting these grants? Most likely they'll say yes, but we'll just the funds that are available work down and request them to submit applications.
Well, I think it'd be amazing if you came out and solicited us to take the money. Well, that sounds really good. So
you would think so. You would think so, Dale. But it's surprising how often in our office we have had grant funds and have difficulty getting people to take them.
Okay. Well, we'll try to reverse that process. Yeah, and I think in terms of selling this to smaller entities, kind of like Blaine's talking about, I think I think the focus would need to be, your eligibility for grants, the need for planning to satisfy the application process. I don't know what other pieces would be selling points, but those are the ones that I picked up on. Is there others that we should think about?
A couple other points. Items that are excluded from needing to follow this process are emergency projects and small projects. So something we've called that out to be $300,000 or less. They can come through, go around the UWIP process. So some of those smaller communities, if they're smaller projects, they don't need to go through this whole process. It'd be nice if, again, we've always said anything we get on the Utah project portal helps, just to get that big picture view. but some things aren't required to be on there to get the funding and things. And then in the planning, or in the UWIP, there's also an item for the small communities where we know there's smaller communities that don't have studies and haven't looked forward 20 years, and they're just kind of living day by day, and because they're doing other things besides their water. There is what we call the small community amount, where we've also incorporated and put into the overall cost an estimate of what we think that is for the smaller communities, because we know that they don't have that planning in there right now.
But didn't you just say we won't have anything to do unless it's secondary irrigation with the communities? Didn't you just say that would be the Division of Drinking Water? I mean, it seems to me like we're concerned with the small irrigation companies, not communities. That, our focus now is irrigation, secondary irrigation. Yes, small communities can secondary irrigation, but hopefully we've got a lot of those done, and that type of thing. So when you keep talking small communities, maybe rephrase it small irrigation companies?
Right, for this board.
For this board?
Most likely.
For this board.
Yeah. I will note there has been talk amongst the council, because there are not grant funds still available. That isn't an appropriation that's been made, and the boards are still planning to operate as usual, but we have now this legislative timeline and process to follow. We did ask that question, just last board meeting, you committed funds to Alberta Water Company, right? A very small drinking water project. Today, Veyo Culinary. And so we asked the Division of Drinking Water. We know this is kind of what the UWIP code has laid out, that you will handle these projects, we'll handle these projects, and water quality will take these projects. But what if, before there's grant money, before we can fully implement this new process, what if someone comes to us and it's like, you know what, let's let the boards do their thing and actually have the Water Development Coordinating Council operate as intended and coordinate. I mean, if drinking water has money and can help this small system, great. If they don't, and we do, we'll go ahead and help them. So I think that's a key we want to point out here, is we want our board to continue operating as it has, because you really are the example of how to run a board and make these funds revolve and continue to grow and be able to do bigger and better projects. So, yeah, there will be changes, but I don't imagine in the very near future they'll be significant. And because the communication today, while it's from Water Resources folks, it's Water Resources folks as part of the Water Development Coordinating Council. So when we say small communities, we're talking broadly all types of projects. We'll continue to work with you and keep you updated as things change. Yeah, the portal is the big thing right now. Let's get projects in the portal so we know what that list really looks like.
Okay. Think we hashed the problems.
You thought.
And I'm sure in a few months we'll just come back and say, now how are we really going to do this? But thank you for all your work on this. Appreciate it.
Here's some contact information and some sites, just kind of if you want to go look at the things. The best contact, if you have questions, is probably send it to that top email, because then we can get it to the right group or the person that would be able to best answer it. Mine's on there, but I'll just be sending that to that other one anyways.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I could, we still have the revolving construction fund that is not part of this. So projects, and I personally, I know, but I'm clarifying. So projects where we're funding less than $1 million, we still have that. And then, sorry, lost my train of thought. And then, just so you know, Moab City has a large project that is not revolving construction fund that we will probably be funding coming up here. Part of it is because this process really isn't up and running, and they don't need grant funds, so they're not worried about I mean, they'd love to have grant funds, but they know if it's not available, they'd like to still do the process. We involved drinking water on the email, saying to them, are you guys okay if we just go ahead and fund this at this point? Because at one point we weren't going to take any more applications after April 19th, but then this one came up. So I haven't heard back from them, but they haven't said no. But also that it was Drinking Water Michael Grange who said, look, we're just going to work with each other and make this work. So when it comes to, water resources can't take drinking water projects. So that's not what, as staff, that we're all just planning to work together and figure this out. So don't be surprised when you see Moab City, please.
Okay. Moving on, our director, Joel Williams, it's your turn.
Thank you. When I was introducing staff previously, I did forget to mention our amazing AV staff. We have Paul Gedge and Carmen McDonald in the room behind us, and participating in some meetings recently caused us to feel really grateful for our AV staff. And we're so spoiled to have these high quality, technologically advanced meetings that multiple camera angles and the way that they can handle the screens. They're very thankful for their help. And then our PIO, Michael Sanchez, is also in the room now. They're at the back. Give it a little wave, Michael. I wanted to mention, it's been a bit of a wild ride here for us the last few months. We got through the legislative session, and towards the end of the legislative session is when I was appointed as director. And then we went into the Utah Water Users Workshop down in St. George. And then I took a little vacation there. Then we, in the end of April, had the chance to go to Washington, D.C. as part of the Western States Water Council meetings that they held there. I was there with our state engineer, Teresa Wilhelmsen, and Candace Hassenjaeger, who's now director at Water Quality. And it was fun to be with them and to be in D.C. We went and met with our congressional delegates, and there was lots of interest in Utah and the drought that we're facing, questions about Great Salt Lake. The data center had still not come up yet, so that was not anything that was mentioned in those visits. I'm sure it would have been now. There was talk of, Colorado River and the challenges there. But it was good to be there and then to meet with other Western states as part of the meetings there and learn of other people's challenges and the things that different states are trying and that this drought is not just affecting Utah. It's kind of the entire West here. So it's going to be an interesting year. I wanted to mention the state water plan there is a draft out, which is amazing. We have a good team working on that, Steph McGinnis and Becca Free and the team that is helping them. They've got a draft ready. It has been sent out, I believe it was Tuesday. It was sent to the Water Conservancy districts for their review, kind of a preliminary, let's get their feedback. We also sent it to the watershed councils, with the idea being, let's get that preliminary feedback, we can make any adjustments needed, and then get it out for a public review, kind of full-scale statewide in July. And so the target is to have the plan published and finished by the end of the year, and so they're on a great time frame to get it out for public comment in July, be able to make any adjustments needed, and then bring it back and have any changes made. And so that's happening as we speak. Just some updates from our water conservation team. This has been a busy time for them because of the drought. There's a lot of heightened interest in water and what people can do to help save water. So they've been going around the state teaching localscapes classes and holding just conservation informational meetings. They went down to Fairview, I think a week and a half ago, and upon request to just go and talk with them about conservation. Some of the upcoming events they have is a WaterWise do-it-yourself webinar called Build a Drought-Ready Yard Without Starting Over. And so there are a lot of people that are taking this year to do a landscape conversion, but that can be a lot of work and sometimes a lot of money. But this webinar would focus on what can you do without necessarily doing a whole makeover of your yard, just small things. And some of those are like using a smart controller and only watering the number of days that your lawn really needs during the year. So That's coming up on May 27th. There's information on our website. There's a as mentioned, the transparent water billing application closes tomorrow, the current period, but there will be future ones as well. There is a Sego Lily Spring Fair in Sandy on May 30th. There is the Weber Basin Spring Garden Fair in Layton. That'll be on June 6th. And then a Sevier County Community Night Out and Resource Fair, which will be June 8th in Richfield. We'll have booths at all of those events to kind of help promote that water conservation message and education. I got some cloud seeding stats from our cloud seeding program, kind of a year-end results. Sadly, we only ran the generators about 30% of our budgeted amount. As we all witnessed, we did not have the amount of snow generating that we had hoped this year. We did have increased drone flight hours, and part of that is because that drone program is expanding. But there were 400 flight hours for the drone, and the previous 3 years averaged at about 45 flight hours. So kind of increased performance there, and those are helpful to just be able to target those specific clouds. We did the Snowscape research campaign. It has concluded, and now they're working on kind of doing quality control and processing that data. The environmental study team has snow, water, sediment, and soil samples. That's kind of to try to look at, are there any effects or impacts from cloud seeding operations? Putting silver iodide into a storm, can you then find increased levels of silver iodide in the soils? And previous studies have kind of shown that it's not detectable above the naturally occurring amounts of silver iodide in soils, but this is something that we wanted to be able to confirm, and so they're doing this study to be able to show analyze any potential environmental impacts. I handed out a one-pager about the data center. This is something that was provided to us at Department of Natural Resources, kind of to help. I'm sure you all have had questions. Once this, I had never had so many people in my personal life and just reach out like, hey, tell me, what's going on here. It is something that has generated a lot of interest, a lot of concern, and so we've been trying to provide information. There's also a frequently asked questions that's been compiled, has about 3 pages of answers to questions that's available on the state's website, the governor's office. So it's just something that I thought I would mention, and if there's any discussion that we need to have, I'm open to that, but more just for information.
Mr. Chair and Joel, if it's okay, this is not this is from the governor's office, or like where's the document from?
I think the information came from MIDA.
Okay.
So probably related to the project sponsor. Cool. As far as them being the ones that have the information.
I mean, it's beautifully laid out.
And it kind of came as we all know, it has come about very quickly. Kind of was not something that was on a lot of people's radar, mine included, and suddenly here it is. And so we're trying to just make sure we have some information available for like conversational use as people are talking about it, and as we all try to grapple with the possibility.
Joel, can I just one quick question, Mr. Chair? This was up in the north end, or I guess in the Bear River area, but had 2 or 3 texts come, and people having all kinds of information about the Bear River being dammed and providing the water and a bunch of things, a lot of stuff going on. But that was just my interest in making sure if there's any responsibility we have as a board to be aware and to be able to respond in those kind of situations. So I don't know, maybe there isn't a place, maybe it's all going to be through the water rights, the Division of Water Rights and everything. But do you see any place for us or any impact here?
It's a good question. I do think, we probably won't have a decision-making role in something like this. You're right, it will be through those regulatory agencies like water rights, water quality, wildlife, all of those agencies that will need to have a permit process, for a new project like this. I think our board is often looked to as a informational board, providing resources, both in funding and information studies, things like that. there have been times where our board has made statements on saying, hey, we want to have an official position on something or other. And that's something obviously the board could consider. I think as far as the information, you're right. There is a lot of speculation and even misinformation out there. Is it's just kind of taken off like a wildfire. So that's partly what we wanted to do, is just say, hey, well, what information do we know that the sponsor has actually provided as far as what their projected impacts are, and get that out to you all. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that, board member Buxton. And then I think, is there anything I'm missing? I'll check with staff, because I think last time I did get to the end and forgot to mention something. I think that might be what we have for now.
Okay. Thank you, Joel. We do have need of a closed session for pending or reasonably imminent litigation, Utah Code Section 524205(1)C. Can I have a motion to go into closed session?
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion. I move to close the meeting to discuss pending litigation pursuant to Utah Code Section 52-42051C.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion. Councilmember Ibsen and Councilmember Jones seconded that. We'll do a roll call vote.
Board Member Tennert. Board Member Jones.
Aye.
Board Member Ibsen.
Aye.
Board Member Buxton.
Aye.
Board Member Van Horn.
Aye.
Board Member Merkley.
Aye.
And Board Member Steed.
Aye.
That's unanimous, so we will go into closed session.
See ya.
Thank you, everybody.
Those board members participating remotely, please stand by as we shift some of our electronics. We will keep this link active.
Is there anything else we need to discuss before we adjourn? Seeing nothing, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I'd be happy to make that motion to adjourn the meeting.
We have council member or board member Buxton. Is there a second? Board member Ibsen, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned.